You're ready. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Samuel Kreisberger. It's Kreisberger. I'm also known by many of my friends as Serge Kreisberger. I was born in the town of Cernăuți in Romania. Now it was called Cernăuți under the Romanians. It's a border town, so therefore right now it's part of the Ukraine, and it's called Cernăuți. And prior to 1918, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Therefore, my mother language is really German.
You could keep talking.
Right. I was born on December 7, 1928, and in the town of Czernowitz, which was probably one of the great center of Yiddish and Jewish culture, and we had probably a population of close to 60,000 Jews out of a general population of 150,000. So therefore, in those days, it was quite a large town, a city actually. My father was had a small textile factory and a glass factory. I would call it that we were sort of middle to middle upper class people. He had really, his parents were dead, so I really did not know my father's family. He had 4 sisters and 1 brother. They were all lived in Poland. One sister lived in Vienna, and all those, and only 1 cousin from all those people survived the Holocaust. So on my father's family side, really nobody survived. But I really never knew them. I was basically, my mother's family lived in a town, in a village. They were farmers. They lived in a village not far from the town of Cernăuți, and they were really the greatest joy in when I was a child. I used to spend my summers at my grandparents', and the love that I got from them is something that I will cherish forever, and they were probably the most important people outside my parents in my life. In 1930, and let me go back and go a little bit through history. In 1933, when Hitler came to power in Germany, and things started already to some extent become difficult for the Jews there, we really had no problem at all. We were under King Carol of Romania. He was basically quite good to the Jews to some extent. So we really had no difficulty with that. Some governments, as Germany became more powerful, some governments came to power in Romania that were sort of more anti-Semitic, but the king sort of was able to really protect the Jews in Romania at the beginning. And everything was pretty much status quo till in 36-37, when the Nuremberg laws became law in Germany. Some of those laws trickled down into Romania, such as people had to keep their stores open on Saturday. So a lot of religious Jews, for instance, that had small stores like a tailor or whatever, were in different quandary because they had to make a decision between their faith and the rules and the laws that were at that point governed. But basically, we were in no danger, physical danger at that time. Now, in 1939, when Hitler decided, although they decided to have the non-aggression pact with Stalin, which was called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, at that time in June of 1939, they both invaded Poland. One took the eastern part, the western part, they left the sliver in the middle or so. And as part of the deal, Russia got Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, but they also got the northern part of Romania, which is the Bukovina, which is that province which Cernoti was the capital of that province. And this change from Romania to Russia really did not take over a long period of time, happened overnight. We lived in a corner house, and that became important, that concept, the corner house, at a later point. We lived in a corner house in a very nice area of the town, and across from us there were two apartments on that first floor where we lived. Or here it's what you would call it the second floor. And across from us lived the Romanian officer. I don't remember if it was a captain or a colonel or whatever, or a major, but anyway, when the Russians were going to take over the province, obviously the Romanian army pulled out, and overnight, they brought on trucks, they emptied his apartment, he left, and the apartment was empty. The next morning when we woke up, the Russians were in town. The Russian army and the police were already in town. And a car drove up to our house, and a woman with two small children came out and went into that apartment. But let me digress for a minute. You know, the most important question that most survivors ask themselves is, because in reality, when you think about it, 1.5 million children, and that's what we were, what I was at the time, were perished during the Holocaust, and only 100,000 survived. And the common thread among all these survivors, no matter what the differences are of whatever they went through, is, why did I survive? And that question really, everybody answers it in a different way and makes their own conclusion. Mine is very simple. I believe you have to be in the right place at the right time. But I also honestly believe that certain miracles had to happen. And I believe miracles happened the way I see it. And I will address 3 of those miracles that really make it that I am here today. And I'm going to go through the first miracle. So that lady that came and moved in with 2 young little girls, a Russian lady, and we were able to some extent communicate because we all spoke Ukrainian because of the we used to play in the villages where my grandparents lived, and
This one that moved in, is she a neighbor?
No, she is a Russian lady, a Russian lady that came from Russia.
Oh, you've never
And
saw
we
her
had
before.
no idea who she was, but we knew she was a lady with 2 small children and with nothing. They just came with a little suitcase with nothing. So my mother sort of saw a woman with small children. She went, she gave them bedding, she gave them food, she befriended them for the first 24 hours. The next day, trucks arrived and brought furniture and brought everything that you can think of for her. and her husband arrived. And her husband was a colonel in the NKVD, in the Russian secret police. He was basically the most important person in town, so to speak. He was really the most important person. And he just, we said hello to each other, and that was the relationship. As time went by, and not much longer after, but probably within a week or two, after the Russian arrived, they said that every person living in the city and in the whole province has to go to a police station and get a passport. Now, when in a dictatorship, when you are told to do something, you do it. So we were ready to go wherever we were supposed to go to get our papers. That is just one evening before our date was, we were supposed to go to that police station. The colonel rang our bell and said he would like to talk to my father. And he told my father, you do not go where you are told to go. You collect all the papers that they need, that they ask you to bring for your family, for your extended family, for all your family, like for my grandparents, for my uncles, for my aunts, for anybody who lived in the area under Russian control. And he said, I will tell you where to come. You will meet me at headquarters, and I'll take care of everything. And
I'm sorry, I should have showed you. Could you just hold a second? Hello? Oh, could you please call back? I'm in the middle of an interview. If you would, please, like about an hour or so. Bye. Okay, Serge, I'm sorry.
No,
I should have shut that phone
okay.
off.
That's okay.
You're doing
Are
great.
you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked?
It's been going.
Okay, it's been going. Okay. When we did that, we really had no idea why he did that. We assumed just as a gesture of, because my mother was kind to his wife, that he would, that he wanted to make it easy for us instead of us standing in line, that he just wanted to help us out. And that we did not understand the significance of what was happening. And by the way, his name was Finkelberg. He was Jewish, that colonel. That colonel. His wife was not, but he didn't even know. I mean, they were under the communists under Stalin. They didn't know they were Jewish. But his name was clearly, Finkelberg is not a Russian name. So we got our passport and we went home happily, and we thought everything is fine. Now, obviously, as soon as the Russians came in, all private property was taken away. So my father's factory and all that, they were working there, but they were workers. My father was working there now, but nobody owned anything. There was immediately, they nationalized everything. So about 2 to 3 weeks after the passports were given out, and everybody had their passports, within a short period of time, and by memory, maybe it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, in the middle of the night, you heard sirens, you heard trucks, you heard police cars, you had complete streets closed up by the Russian secret police, by the military, by the way they did that. And they went to specific, this was not a random thing. They went to specific apartments in the, like across the street from us. They went to people. They went in our house. They went, but they didn't come to our door. They went upstairs. They at random went and they picked out people. They gave them an hour to pack a suitcase. They took them down. They put them in a truck, and these people were gone. They were gone two places, or they were sent to Siberia, or they were sent to the coal mines in the Crimea and the Donbas regions, where almost those that went to Siberia, a larger percentage survived eventually, and after the war came back and survived there. But those that were sent to the coal mines to work, and they almost nobody came back. And we were not touched. And then we found out what he did for us. Basically, Stalin, anybody who was not a member of the proletariat, was an enemy of the state, and they took any people that were of upper middle class people, and we would have definitely been that at the time. We would have been deported, I don't know where, and I don't know if we would have survived or what would have happened, but he gave us passports making us members of the proletariat. He gave us passports showing that we were working class people. And that is what he did for us. Now, I look at that as a miracle that a Romanian officer had to live here to vacate an apartment, that he found out about and got his wife to move into this apartment. And if all that didn't happen, who knows? So that is sort of my first miracle that happened. Now, for about 2 years, we were under, till 1941, the peace between Russia and Germany stayed intact. So while Western Europe was being occupied by Germany in the war, and they occupied France and Belgium and so forth, and they occupied all of Europe except for England, and the war started on the Western Front, we were still living and going to school. I went to Russian school and lived basically a normal life at that point. But, you know, we were all going to work. After school, I became a sign maker or whatever. They put all the kids, everybody was working and so forth. In 1941, when Hitler decided to attack Russia, we were in the town, we were there, and overnight, when the war started, we were obviously at the beginning of we were obviously the furthest west of you know, and so Romania became an ally of Hitler. And the Germans, when they went through our town, almost at the first or second day of the war, they went through our town. There were no fighting. The Russians were gone. By the way, that family, that Russian family and the colonel, they were gone overnight. Wow. When the war started. They were all gone, and the town was basically empty till the Germans came in. They went through the town. They took about 200 of the most prominent Jews, the chief rabbi, and so all the rabbinical people and whatever. They took them down to the river Prut, which went through the town. They shot those 400 people, and the Germans left. That's what they did, and they left. And the Romanian, because this is part of Romania, Romania was their ally, Romania took over the province again. So now we were again under Romanian rules. So it took us about a week or two. We obviously, there were no phones, there were no, we had no idea what happened to my grandparents, to the rest of the family that lived in the villages, not in the town. I have an uncle stayed with us, and my mother had two brothers, and they were in town, so we knew they were fine, but we did not know what happened to my grandparents, and it took about a week after later, people came from the village and told my mother and my father that they were killed. And they actually described what happened is that these Ukrainian, they were themselves, but they said, oh, we didn't do anything, we couldn't help, we're the good ones. But anyway, they told us that my grandfather, you know, they didn't have running water, so they went out to the well, and it was sort of like on a little hill with a deep well, and my grandfather was just pulling up the water, and they rode up in there on horses, and then they shot him right there, and he fell right there. And when my grandmother heard that, she ran out to him, and they shot her, and she fell on top of him, and they killed every single Jew in that village. They went from house to wherever the Jews were interspersed among the Ukrainian. So there was no. So they killed about 300 to 350 Jews, and they killed in every village. My grandfather had a brother that lived in the adjoining, and he got killed in the adjoining village. His children were in the town of in Chernovitz, so they really didn't do anything. They just, the Ukrainians stayed in the villages and killed the people, but in any larger town or city, the people were left in basically in good condition. For about a week or two, about 3 weeks after the Romanians came in, they treated us because we were under the Russians before, that's like a different province. So what they did, they told everybody we had to go, an order came out that we all had to go into the ghetto and just pick up a suitcase. You left your apartment, you took whatever you could on a pushcart or whatever, and you went to this ghetto into anybody's apartment. You ended up with 20 people in a house or whatever, and they basically and not long after we arrived in the ghetto, I mean almost immediately.
Well, the ghetto was not far from where you lived?
It was, I mean, it was pretty far from where we lived, but it was the area where the poor Jews lived. It was like the Jewish quarter where the poorer Jews lived there, and that's where they turned that into a ghetto. And they didn't really have walls around it, but you were there. You couldn't leave anything in you had to put on the yellow star. You had to immediately put on the star. All that happened within 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the breaking out of the war, after the Romanians came and the Germans came back.
Your family was okay at that time?
Yeah, we were all fine. We were just herded into... I had one small brother, 10 years younger, and they herded us into the ghetto, and we were there. But almost immediately, they started taking people from the ghetto. They lined them up on the street with soldiers on both sides, and they walked them down to the railroad station, and they sent them to Transnistria, on the other side in the Ukraine, and to labor camps. These were not death camps, but almost 70% of the people died from hunger, from diphtheria, from the tuberculosis, from pneumonia, from whatever diseases. Nobody took,
Wherever they were sent, they didn't know what kind of...
They were sent there in the labor camps. And they were working in the Ukraine, in the fields, and in mills, and in factories, whatever. They were working because the Germans gave the Romanians that part of the Ukraine also. So the Romanians There were no Germans. These were not death camps. These were labor camps. But
Did the
about
people realize that they were labor camps?
they had no idea where they were going to go.
I was just wondering if they were aware of death camps at that time.
No, that's before death camps.
Yeah.
The death camps came only in 42. We're talking 41.
Okay.
So when they sent and obviously we were going to be shipped too, and here is the second miracle. For some reason, and I have no idea, because unfortunately I never asked that question of my father, and I don't know the answer, that my father having that textile factory, and that being war times, and there were no spare parts, and there were no, a politically connected Romanian got that, was given that factory. The problem is he didn't know what to do. He had no idea how to run a textile factory. So somehow he found my father in the ghetto and said, I tell you what, I will make a deal that's sort of I make you an offer you can't refuse. I will give you and your family basically your life. I will give you the papers and documents, and you will be able to stay here in town. You will come to work for me every day. You will not get any pay, but I'm giving you your life for you working for me. And basically I consider that the next miracle. How did he find my father, and if if this guy didn't get that, but I'll regress for a minute to tell you that under the Russians, when the Russians deported out of the 60,000 Jews, they deported between 5,000 and 10,000 Jews into Siberia and the coal mines. When the Romanians now deported, they deported almost all the people. There were only between around 5,000 people like our family that got documents from other people. That how they got them, I don't know, but they got documents to stay in the ghetto. So we were left in town, and we were not sent to the labor camps. We just went to work here. And actually I was the big breadwinner, because you had to stay. You could only go out for 1 hour 3 times a week or whatever it is to buy something. And what we lived off is selling the clothes of our back, because the Romanians, there was nothing. It was wartime. There was nothing to buy. So they came to Jewish homes, and into the ghetto, and they gave you pittance for it, but enough to buy potatoes or whatever so you can survive. And I remember my father actually had the foresight, and he bought a box or a carton or a crate of chocolate, because chocolate doesn't go bad. So it turns white, but it doesn't go bad. Mm-hmm. So we were sort of eating a lot of chocolate during that time. I remember that. And whatever you can buy for a few potatoes, some vegetables, whatever. So the job I got, I used to be able, although I wore the Jewish star, and I was able to go all day long through the whole city, where my job was to go, like in Europe, almost every house had a center courtyard. And I used to go into the courtyards and scream up, do you have any copper pots to sell? Because they were collecting copper for the war effort. They needed copper. So, I used to buy that on behalf of a Romanian and bring that in at the end of the day. And he used to give me for every $1 a penny or whatever it is. And I was the biggest breadwinner, actually, as a child. doing that. And